Did it start recording? Oh, there it goes.
Recording in progress.
Good morning. We are officially in the Dominican Republic. We moved here 2 days ago.
Yeah, it feels like a week already.
Yeah, it does. Long days, but I think it's only been 2 days.
But it's been fun.
Yeah,
Fun.
like the power goes out, went out like 4 times in one day, but phone's like 3 minutes at a time.
We're drinking coffee out of a glass.
We experienced a small earthquake, or at least we felt the tremors of an earthquake that happened like 2 hours from here.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, the boys woke up, or one boy, Grayson, woke up screaming.
I don't blame him. He woke up and his whole bed was shaking. He's like, my God is shaking. But it was slightly comical.
Yeah.
Watch the streets flood due to lots of rain.
Yeah, it's raining a lot. Streets are flooding. So that's been fun. So, that leads us into a great topic today of curiosity and always having curiosity to get where we're at.
Yeah. So the last podcast we did, we were speaking about the conscious leadership tools and how they're based on 15 commitments. And commitment number 2 is I commit to growing in self-awareness. I commit to regarding every interaction as an opportunity to learn. I commit to curiosity as a path to rapid learning. And now we're going to talk about how we use this in our relationships or in our own lives and what that means to us, to be able to go back to this commitment in times that you feel like you hit a wall or that there are no other options.
Yeah, I think it's important that this is the big understanding of the above the line, below the line, because with curiosity, it really pushes you above the line. And today we're going to talk about what is above the line, below the line. We'll talk about the drift shift model, and the drift list, which I also call like the coping mechanisms that you use in your life when things come up, and ways to get out of them, and also living with curiosity.
Yeah, and one thing I told Alex when he started his men's work is a lot of the work that's in the conscious leadership group is used by a lot of today's like coaches and people who are practicing the self-awareness and inner growth. It's just it all has different language, and this is the reason I liked the work of the conscious leadership so much, is because it puts the language in a way that I feel like anybody off the street can relate. Like you can go up to anyone and talk to them about this and they can be like, okay, yeah, like I get that. Where sometimes some of this work, when you're using, like when you go to Instagram and like these coaches and stuff, it's very spiritual, or it's using different words that people don't necessarily use in their everyday life. And I know that sometimes that steers people away from being able to grasp the underlying lessons, which is just self-awareness, really, with a lot of these tools. But my point is, some of this might not be the first time you hear of it. It's just using different language, different way to communicate the very tools that a lot of us know about when it comes to inner growth, self-awareness, and doing that work on yourself.
And I want to say personally that having curiosity, the topic for today in our relationship, when I started opening up to that, there was so much growth within our relationship. The connection, the communication, everything that was happening in our relationship was getting so much better because there was curiosity. And think about it in the sense of, and I many men that I've worked with and I talk with, we want to be right, and it can go for the same for the women. And when you are committed to being right, you're closed-minded. So if you're able to open up and lean into curiosity, and I think the most important thing is that when I say lean into curiosity, there's questions that come from this. So you have asking yourself questions and being focused on the question, not the answer. Because when you're looking for the answer, you're not gonna make the growth that you're looking for. You're gonna be committed to that answer. You're looking for the answer, you're committed to it, rather than just having wonder and seeing where that curiosity takes you.
So as Alex talks about that, the two willingness questions, so it's two worksheets, you can use them together. They have the 15 commitment worksheet and then the willingness questions worksheet. And for every commitment, there's the willingness questions and willingness which the drift shift model speaks about this. You ask these questions when you recognize that you are on the drama triangle and you're looking to shift out of it back into presence. So one of those questions is, are you willing to let go of being right? Which Alex touched on that. And the other one is, are you willing to get more interested in learning than defending your ego? And for me, I think that's a hard one because so many times we're like, but I know I'm right. And I know I deserve to like be recognized in my rightness and that ego, like being able to tell your ego, like step aside, I don't need you right now. It's not that an ego is bad, but our ego has its time and place where we need it, and it has its time and place where it's okay to say, hey, get to the side, I got this. And letting go of being right, that's a big one. So many times we put ourselves in the drama triangle because we want to be right and we don't want to let go of that fact of, well, I know I'm right. And for me it was like, I know if I don't do XYZ, like this isn't going to happen. But the moment that I was willing to let that go and being right, your life starts changing. So that is what we're going to discuss on today's podcast, and hopefully keep it under 20 minutes. So it's an easy car ride to listen to this or short walk somewhere.
And this podcast is now being sponsored by, no, I'm just kidding. Just real quick, want to reiterate from last podcast, above the line, below the line. Above the line is committed to learning, openness, and there's one more that I just dropped. Oh yeah, committed to growth and learning, acceptance and trust, and committed to curiosity. Below the line is defensiveness, closed-minded, and the idea of being right. So when we say above the below the line, that's the reference there. I want to dive into when we're living our lives and we're in relationship or in relational spaces and things come up. And let's talk about pattern recognition for a second. For me, when I'm in a relationship with Jisil, when we're in the same room, we're having conversations and I'm in my head, I could be thinking about the kids, or I could be thinking about how I didn't do something right or the way that I wanted to in that specific moment. It takes me out of the present moment. So when we talk about drifting or coping, we start to feel something, or we start to be put in a situation where we're uncomfortable, and we drift. So we go out of the present moment and we start to create stories in our head. And for me, once again, I want to use my own experience. A lot of times when I experienced that in the past, I would drift by scrolling on my phone. I would drift by sports, immersing myself into extracurricular activities. I would drift by alcohol, pornography. And there's this long list, by the way, on the Conscious Leadership group that has a lot of ways that you can drift. I'm just speaking on my own ways right now, but we all drift. I just want to say that everybody copes. It's about your recognition and your awareness around that, and your willingness when you're ready to shift out of that. And there's this exercise that is once again on the resource tab in the Conscious Leadership group that helps you how to use the drift list and shift back to being above the line. So 97%, and just so knows I like statistics, 97% of humanity drift. They go below the line and live in the victim mindset at some point in their life. In various parts of their life.
Where did you get that statistic from?
The book, the leadership, conscious leadership book.
Who's the other 3%? I want to meet these people.
Yeah. But anyways, 97% of us do it. It's about shifting back above the line.
Yeah, and they say all great leaders, conscious leaders, everyone shifts. What happens over time, the more you practice this, is you're just in self-awareness quicker. So you're able to recognize your patterns faster. You're able to realize when you are drifting and when you go below the line, and then you're just able to shift faster versus, you know, when you're not in awareness of it, you could just stay stuck on that drama triangle for, you know, days, hours, weeks, your whole life.
Our youngest ran in. I press pause.
Yeah, so this is not about, oh, I'm never going to drift and be on the drama triangle ever again. This is more of being in awareness of when you do, and then having the tools to be able to say, okay, I know I'm on the drama triangle, I recognize that. Now, how do I shift out of this? And according also to the book, like most people were only in presence for like 0 to 4 seconds at a time. And most of the time we're either in the past or in the future, rarely ever in the present moment. And once again, it's not about perfection. It's not about being in the present moment all the time. I don't think that's possible. It's just not the way our minds work. And that's okay. But it is striving to be in that space more often than not. And once again, just knowing when you are and when you aren't. So a lot of, and then what I tie this back to is a lot of the times when we're having arguments with our spouse or disagreements, it's like, are you disagreeing or arguing about what's happening in the current moment? Or are you bringing up things from the past or things that haven't even happened, you know, from the future? And I mean, that's something that I still, you know, I was doing this not too long ago when we were discussing our move coming out here. And I was listing all the reasons why we shouldn't move yet. None of them had happened. You know, all of them were in the future. And I had to like sit with myself one day and ask myself like, okay, why is it that I'm afraid of these things and they haven't happened yet? You know, I'm creating all these stories that if we move, you know, this is going to happen and this and that. And, you know, this has to happen first. And, you know, a big part of that was we still haven't sold our RV. It's sitting in a parking lot right now. And I had told him originally, I was like, I don't want to move till we sell the RV. Well, it came to a point of, you know, I'm pregnant right now. I'm 6 months pregnant. I knew that I didn't want to give birth in the United States, that I wanted to settle in here, give birth here in Dominican Republic. And I had to sit with myself and said, what do I want more? Do I want to sell the RV more, or do I want to give birth in Dominican Republic more? And I had to let go of all those stories that I created in my head of the reasons why we hadn't sold the RV, or what would happen if we didn't sell the RV, and say, okay, I want my birth more. Now I need to move and make choices towards that direction and set my intentions there and not worry about this. Like, it's going to handle itself when it does. And yeah, that's the way I have used the tools in my life, is just another thing that they use here is like, what's in your control, what's not in your control. Like, and that's what I told him. I was like, I cannot control when we sell the RV. Like, we're gonna keep posting about it, we can keep talking about it, and the RV may still not sell, you know, 3, 4, 5 months from now. And am I willing to sit around here living in it and have another child here while we're still trying to sell it? Or do I want to go start my life in Dominican Republic? And I was like, I can control that. Like, I can control when we leave, I can control when we move, I can control all that. I can't control when we sell the RV. So that's really what it came down to. And being able to make choices from that place feels so much more powerful than making choices of, well, I have to do this because if I don't, X, Y, Z. It's like, unless you know for a fact that that is going to be the outcome of something, to me, it didn't feel good to make a decision based on the outcomes that I didn't even know were gonna happen or not. And it turns out that the moment we made the decision, that we're like, okay, we're going to do this, everything started falling into place. And then it was just like, okay, it's not even a problem anymore. So that is the magic, of all of this. And when you set your intention and start moving towards what you want and put the things in motion without necessarily seeing step 3, 4, and 5, but you can see 1 and you can see 2, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna take the next step. And when you get on 2, then you can see 3 and you can go take the next step. And that's basically what it's come down to for me, is being able to say, you know what, I know I can't see what's ahead, but I can see what's right in front of me and I can see where I need to put my foot next. That's all that matters right now. And taking those first 2 steps and forgetting about, where the stones are gonna come out for the rest.
Yeah, I think a lot of the resistance to at the beginning of our relationship, and when you first introduced these, a lot of the resistance was the fear of unknown. And I think it applies to what we're talking about right now. And a lot of people have resistance to curiosity because of the fear of unknown.
Mhm.
And our brains, they protect us from that change. They don't like change. We don't like change. And so it's that fear of unknown. And I think it's important to say that it's going to be uncomfortable, but having a support system around you of like-minded people and being able to talk about these things, okay? Because when we drift, if we are ready to make the shift, it's always easier when you're able to talk about it, talk through it. And so this drift list in here, it talks about having an accountability partner or having someone in your life that you could um, help hold you accountable. And it says, this drift list that I talked about has like, we'll just go with like 30 to 40, maybe 50 things, drifting mechanisms. And it talks about step 1 of identifying your top 3. And so for me, like I told you, it was scrolling on the phone, it was sports, or excuse me, it was alcohol, and it was pornography. And so circling those 3 things and then making a commitment to curb them or stop them. So when you drift into those things, into those mechanisms, that you can bring awareness and shift out of them. So for me, and I do it still to this day, when I am scrolling on my phone and maybe I'm hearing the kids in the background and it seems like they're wanting my attention. I'm like, oh, I'm drifting, Alex. Like I'm not here. I'm not present. I'm not giving my attention to my kids or to Jasil. And I stop. I turn the phone off and I make a conscious effort to reconnect. And so that's one way of curbing that, right? Is setting a plan in place of like, hey, I'm only going to check my phone 3 times a day, or I'm going to check my email, or I'm going to whatever it may be, a specific times a day. And then, checking in with, finding that partner and then checking in with them and then holding accountable every day, saying, hey, like I did this, and this, and celebrating the wins, right? Because it's important that we build confidence when we're doing the work, as a person, when we're doing the work as a couple, is celebrating those wins. And understanding or paying attention to the emotions, the feelings that's going on inside the body when you are drifting, and when you make that conscious effort to not drift, to sit with what you're feeling or what you're going through. And then at the end of the day, then, like decide if that's, if this is for you, if this is the commitment that you want to make to yourself, and put that commitment as a forefront into your daily life. I think it's important that we identify again that radical responsibility and curiosity are the 2 biggest and foundational commitments when it comes to shifting from the to me, the victim mindset, to by me, the creator mindset, and doing that. So I feel like I did. And then also the last thing with this drift list, with this exercise, and I will tie it into the show notes. You can commit to 30 days, doing this for 30 days, 7 days, whatever it may be. the time frame. But it's all about curbing your top three or your drifting mechanisms to bring yourself back to the present. As Giselle mentioned before, a lot of emotions come from thinking in the future and in the past.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, like, this isn't something you don't ever want to like critique yourself or beat yourself up about it, because you recognize that, you know, you were on the drama triangle, or any of this is really just to bring self-awareness. Is really just to, in a sense, call yourself out and be like, hey, this is what's going on right now. And then you can choose, like, okay, do I want to change it? Or do I still want to be here? Like, once again, I spoke about that in the last podcast. Like, there's been times where I'm not ready for a shift. I'm not ready to get out of the trauma triangle. And I just tell Alex, I'm like, I don't want to shift. Like, I'm okay where I am, and I want to be right here where I'm right. I was like, and I know I'm completely below the line, but that's okay too. Like, sometimes we are, as long as you know it. I think that is the most important piece of this, is just knowing where you are, so you can communicate that to other people, right? So you take responsibility for that instead of putting that on the other person. So when I'm in those places, like, I'm not taking my anger out on him. I'm just angry and I want to be with my anger, or I want to be with my upset, or wherever the case may be. And I'm just like, this is where I am right now. I'm not ready to be conscious or committed or anything. Like, I want to be angry, so let me be angry. And, you know, he has to give me space so I can be in my feelings
Yeah.
for that.
I want to add on to that too, and we've done this sometimes. It's not something that we do a lot, but I know from talking with other people, other men that are doing the work, and their partners doing the work. A lot of times when there's that uncomfortable situation where she's sitting with her anger, where I'm frustrated, giving that acknowledgement of like, hey, we are okay,
Yeah.
but I need to sit with this, because we all have some form of abandonment wound. It's just some are worse than the others. And I know for me, when she gets to a point where she's angry, or she wants to disconnect, a little bit of that wound of abandonment comes up, and I'm like, oh, whoa, whoa. And it's something I have to address with myself too. So just, we don't do it as much, but it's something that I know that we have done in the past, and then also other relationships of like, hey, we are okay. I just need to sit with this.
And real quick, last thing on this commitment number 2, it talks about as regarding every interaction as an opportunity to learn. Like, that's another huge one that we have used, is whenever these big moments come up, or these situations that we feel like, you know, we're clashing, or, you know, we're having disagreement, it's simply popping the question into the conversation of like, okay, what do we have to learn from this? And that starts opening that curiosity part of this commitment, because now, instead of both of you being focused on what you're trying to be right about, or what your point you're trying to get across, you're both now seeing the situation from a different place. And, you know, we had to talk about it, like, if you're in a room, just taking a different perspective, taking a different angle from the room to be able to see what you're trying to resolve, because we stay in the same spot in the room, you're only going to see that one angle the whole time. So being able to move around and say, okay, I've been seeing it from this angle the whole time. Is there more to this? Like, how else can I walk around this, see it from up, below, you know, from the sides, to solve it? And once again, it's about being able to communicate that back and forth, like, hey, I want to commit to this. Do you think this is something we can do together? Because I was using these tools by myself for many years, and it's not that it's not possible, but you get so much more acceleration and growth, and, you know, what's the word? You see so much more change, you know, if you're doing this together, obviously, than if you're doing it, you know, just you by yourself, and your spouse doesn't really know what you're trying to do. So definitely having just a conversation of like, hey, you know, like, there's these new tools, I would really like it if we start using them. But that's all we had for today.
Yeah, I want to end on saying that we will have a special podcast solely about the drama trial, because Giselle's mentioned that like 3 times in this podcast. And if you're listening and you're like me, you're like, what the hell is that? So
I mean, I spoke about it a little bit in the first podcast.
we need 20 minutes at least,
Okay.
because that's a deep one. So Thank you for listening, and we're signing off from Santiago, Dominican.
De los Caballeros.
Oh, okay,
Santiago de los Caballeros, Dominican Republic,
Dominican Republic.
or you can say República Dominicana.